Well, it was mostly a thrill, and it was.
Fleetwood Mac for 50 years is falling apart. Christine McVie's death in 2022 crushed him. The Maui fires took his livelihood. His body is failing from decades of abuse. But the saddest part isn't what we can see. It's what you whispered to a friend last month that nobody expected. The end is coming faster than anyone realized. Mick Fleetwood came into the world on June 24, 1947 in Red Ruth, Cornwall at a time when England was still recovering from the war. Food and clothes were rationed, and most homes lived with less, and his family was no different. His father served in the Royal Air Force, and his pay was modest, so the house was simple and quiet, built around discipline and imagination rather than comfort. Mick was the second of 3 children, and even though life was tight, his parents made room for music. Jazz drifted in from the radio, while the routines of military life shaped the rhythm inside their home. Those early days with rationed books and careful spending created a kind of resilience in him that stayed for life. It also gave him a work ethic that became the backbone of everything he later built in music. When he turned 4, the family moved to Wales because of another RAF posting. Suddenly, the world around him changed. Not just the towns or the scenery, but the sounds inside his bedroom. His father brought home African drumming records from Egypt, and Mick played them again and again. Those beats felt alive. At 6, he was tapping them out on pots and pans, and soon he was building little drum sets from boxes. Those early rhythms stuck with him and shaped the way he heard music long before Fleetwood Mac existed. Those patterns from faraway places were already making a home in his head. Then when Mick was 10, the family went even farther. They moved to Egypt, and Cairo greeted him with music that came from markets, clubs, and dusty streets. He heard Arabic drummers at festivals, and he heard big band jazz in small, smoky rooms, and he soaked up every sound like it was waiting for him. He watched street musicians play with a kind of freedom he had never seen, and tried to copy their patterns when he went home. By the time the family returned to London in 1957, Mick had a head full of rhythms that did not match the standard beats British kids were learning. He already felt different, and that difference soon became his strength. At 13, he convinced his parents to buy him his first real drum kit. It was small and squeezed into a cramped London flat, but it was his. He practiced every chance he got. Neighbors complained through the thin walls, but Mick kept going. His hands hurt, the room shook, and sometimes the noise filled the whole building, but he would not stop. His parents realized this was not a passing phase, and slowly began to support him. Those long hours changed him. They shaped the thick, steady groove he would later become famous for. As he hit his teenage years, he started slipping into Soho jazz clubs. Places like the Marquee and the Flamingo became his secret classrooms. He watched drummers who played with feeling instead of rules. Philly Joe Jones was one of his heroes, and Mick studied him quietly from the back of the room. In 1957, the Marquee was already hosting early versions of bands like the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds, and Mick stood there absorbing everything. He learned that groove mattered more than perfection, and that instinct could be louder than technique. That idea would stay with him forever. Everything changed in 1963. Mick was 16 and decided school was slowing him down. He left and moved to London full-time. He tried auditioning for bands, but his height made him look awkward behind the kit, and his timing was rough. One group even rejected him for both reasons. He worked odd jobs like hotel porter shifts just so he could afford drum lessons. He lived with his older sister, practiced in her garage, and kept telling himself he could get better. Those months were difficult, but he refused to give up. In 1964, he finally joined his first semi-professional group, the Chesters. They played R&B covers in rough North London pubs, the kind of places where the floors stuck to your shoes and the pay barely covered dinner. at 6 feet 6 inches in, headward over everyone, which made his presence unforgettable. But his timing sometimes clashed with the guitarists, and arguments broke out right on stage. Some nights, the tension grew so much that they nearly fought in front of the crowd. It was messy and loud, but it taught Mick how to handle pressure. It also showed him that music required teamwork, not just passion. In 1965, a fight during a gig pushed him too far, and he smashed his drum kit. It was a terrible moment, but it led to something better. His sister lent him money for a second-hand Ludwig set, a kit known for its huge bass drum and booming sound. With it, he began chasing gigs in clubs like Cluck's Clique, where young musicians fought for any chance to be heard. That new drum kit restored his confidence and caught the attention of players who were already respected. It felt like a fresh start. By 1966, he joined the Bow Street Riot for a short stint. They toured Scotland in an old van that broke down in the middle of nowhere, leaving them stranded without food or money. Mick slept inside cold venues, lived on scraps, and learned the hard truth about life on the road. Those weeks were rough, but they hardened him. Every setback made him more determined. Later that same year, he got a small spot in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, a band that trained some of the best musicians in Britain. He jammed with Peter Green and Dusty Basements, learning blues shuffles and the delicate balance between restraint and power. But Mayall found him too wild and dismissed him. The sting hurt, but the lesson stayed. In July 1967, a real turning point arrived. Mick and Peter Green left the Blues Breakers and formed Fleetwood Mac. Their first show was on August 13 at the Windsor Jazz and Blues Festival. Heavy rain nearly ruined their equipment, but they pushed through and promoters recognized their grit. That night helped them secure a record deal. Within weeks, they convinced John McVie to join by offering equal songwriting credits, something rare for that time. The band's raw blues sound quickly caught attention. Bob Brunning had toe-step aside when McVie joined in September 1967, and soon the group released Black Magic Woman. By early 1968, it cracked the UK charts, proving they had real commercial potential. Their debut album in February 1968 reached number 4 on the UK Albums Chart and stayed there for 37 weeks. Mick's oversized bass drum became both a signature and a logistical nightmare, especially when they tried to squeeze it into small vans. Still, the sound it produced made the struggle worth it. Then came Albatross in November 1968. It was soft, dreamy, and unlike anything they had done. Mick used Tony mallets to create that floating cymbal feel. The song sold 60,000 copies each week and reached number 1 in January 1969. But success brought trouble. Royalty disputes with manager Clifford Davis opened Mick's eyes to how easily the music industry could betray its own artists. Even so, Albatross became their only UK number 1 single and influenced groups like the Beatles. But the stage was not always calm. Jeremy Spencer, their slide guitarist, often brought chaos to live shows. Hestripped, acted wildly, and once walked on stage with something stuffed in his trousers that nearly got them banned. Clubs refused to book them, including the famous Marquee Club. And during the 1969 Europe tour, drug use and personal tensions kept rising. Spencer disappeared backstage for hours, and the group struggled to keep things together. The mix of brilliance and instability became part of their early identity. Peter Green's mind began slipping in May 1970, and it happened fast. He had written Black Magic Woman and Oh Well, and people thought he was untouchable. Yet the heavy LSD use caught up with him during a stop in Munich. Something shifted inside him that night. Hester had saying that making music for money was wrong. And soon, he wandered around in long robes with hair falling past his shoulders, talking about giving everything away. The band watched him change almost overnight. Their manager, Clifford Davis, said both Green and Danny Kerwin looked shaken in a way that felt deeper than exhaustion. Then came the concert in Munich. Green walked off and did not come back. A short while later, he checked into a mental health facility. Mick Fleetwood knew he had to make a hard call, and he fired his closest friend even though it crushed him. The band moved on, but the loss opened a new chapter. Their blues foundation cracked, and the sound slowly shifted in a different direction. Nick carried the guilt for years. Danny Kerwin's fall came with just as much heartbreak. He joined in 1968 as a young guitarist who could help balance Peter Green's force. But by 1972, his drinking had taken over. Tension followed him everywhere. One night in Chicago, it all exploded. Backstage, he fought with Bob Welch about guitar tuning, refused to goon, smashed his guitar, and then tore into the band with harsh words. Mick Fleetwood had no choice. After the show began, Mick stepped out and fired him at tour. People in the crowd were stunned. It was rare to see a dismissal happen in real time. Kerwin disappeared from the spotlight after that, and spent years drifting without a home. It marked another painful shift in Fleetwood Mac's story. Bob Weston entered the band in 1971 to replace Kerwin, but trouble met him too. During the 1973 Los Angeles tour, Mick Fleetwood discovered Weston was sleeping with his wife, Jenny Boyd. The humiliation hit him like a punch. Mick confronted him in anger and fired him immediately. The tour collapsed with only 2 weeks finished and 26 more shows left undone. Weston had played on Penguin and Mystery to Me, yet it was the affair that defined his time. Theban's instability deepened, but oddly this chaos cleared the table for something new. The future pairing with Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham rested on these broken moments. Money problems brought on an even stranger chapter. In 1973, manager Clifford Davis decided the band should still tour even though the real members needed a break. So, he hired a fake Fleetwood Mac made from a group called Legs and sent them across the United States. Fans had no idea the people on stage were not the real band. When Nick and the others found out, they went into a legal war. Davis claimed he owned the name and even the recordings. The lawsuits drained their savings. They had to pawn gear just to keep recording. This mess finally pushed Mick to cut Davis loose and take control. Leadership slowly moved into Mick's hands because no one else could steady the ship. Kristen Impey's presence became crucial when she joined full-time in 1970. Her calm voice and steady hand guided them through a rough period. But even she had breaking points. Her marriage to John McVie was crumbling due to his heavy drinking. And in 1972, she nearly walked away. She said she could not take it anymore. Mick Fleetwood stepped in and arranged quiet talks behind closed doors to keep her from leaving. Those talks kept the band from losing one of its most important pieces. Christine stayed, kept writing, and her songs carried warmth through the storm. By 1974, Mick Fleetwood pushed the band to move to Los Angeles. Taxes were crushing them, and the fight with Davis made life almost unbearable. They signed with Reprise Records, hoping for a fresh start, but chaos followed them across the ocean. Mick slid deeper into cocaine, burning through money at an unbelievable pace. Some reports say he spent around $60 million on drugs through his peak years. Nights blurred in Hollywood clubs, while the band squeezed into a small house in Laurel Canyon. They tried recording Heroes Are Hard to Find, and sessions often spiraled as deals were made in the middle of the night with Mick still high. Bob Welch felt the weight and finally quit in November 1974. With Welch gone, the band had no guitarist and no male singer. Everything felt broken, but this crack was where new light would enter. On New Year's Eve 1974, Mick heard a demo in a Sausalito studio. Producer Keith Olsen played a track from Buckingham Nicks. And Mick felt something spark. Lindsey Buckingham's guitar work and Stevie Nicks' voice struck him immediately. He invited them in. The others hesitated, but Mick pushed until everyone agreed. Buckingham insisted that Stevie join too. It was all or nothing. By the end of December, the duo had officially joined. It became the most important choice Mick ever made. It carried Fleetwood Mac straight into a new era. Work on Rian began in 1975, and everything about it felt charged. Mick reached back into his childhood memories from Ghana, where his father had served in the British Army. He used those rhythms to shape the drums. Stevie Nicks brought lyrics about a Welsh witch, and she floated through the studio in that dreamy way of hers. Lindsey Buckingham pushed for tight structure, which clashed with Stevie's freer style. Arguments went on through the night. More than once, Stevie said she was done. To calm everyone down, Mick set up drum circles in his backyard. The group would gather, hit rhythms, and let the tension melt away. Those little gatherings